Well, in a jazz setting, the bass drum and the snare drum are doing what I call it commentary, but it's like a spontaneous conversation that goes on with the other players in the band. This is one of the big differences between a jazz drummer and, say, a rock drummer in most situations. In most rock situations and in a lot of Latin situations, the drummer has a beat that they're going to play. Like they say, on this song, this is the beat you play. And so you have that beat, and it's you and the bass player kind of doing the same thing together throughout the whole song. In a jazz setting, where swing is being used, the basic groove is being kept here, and there's a soloist playing maybe. I also can hear the pianist, the invisible pianist today, who's keeping the chords happening underneath. And I'm listening to all of what's going on around me, and I'm reacting to it all the time. And if the soloist puts out a couple of accents that are distinctive, or if the pianist does something really interesting or unusual, or if they're setting up a certain kind of rhythm, then I can answer them with this. That's where the bass drum and the snare drum come in. So if I'm keeping time here, I'll play like 8 bars with just the ride cymbal and a hi-hat, and then I'll add in, and we'll imagine that there's an alto sax player standing here, and that there's a pianist and a bass player. And notice how the activity in the bass drum and the snare drum ends up being, it's improvised. I'm making it up on the spot, and since I don't have a whole band here, I can't actually react to what's going on around. But if you can imagine the other players, and that when I do an accent here, it might be something that's joining somebody else. That's a different kind of a way of thinking about timekeeping, because it's not so clearly specified. A lot more is left up to you in the moment to decide how much activity do I want to have here, and do I want to be real busy, or do I want to just sort of lay low? So let me play a little bit of time without the bass drum and the snare drum, and then I'll start sneaking it in, and I'll gradually build it in, and you'll hear how you can go from a very small amount of activity to really quite a bit, depending on what the musical situation is. Let's say, okay, 8 bars of swing, right about here. 1, 2, notice I'm snapping that 2 and 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Kept adding more and more and more stuff. If I was playing behind a piano trio, I wouldn't be playing that much activity. If I'm playing with an older style pianist who's just playing real simple and light, then my activity down here is going to be simple and light. If I'm playing with a tenor saxophone player who's going, leaning sideways and doing all that crazy stuff, then it's going to be more like what I was doing at the end. But what's so beautiful about swing and jazz in general is that you tailor your activity in the moment to what's going on in the moment. It's not so preset. So much is left up to your musical ear and some of the listening you've done. If you have to listen to a certain amount of jazz so you can kind of have an idea about what's appropriate. But the activity down here is left up to you. That's kind of confusing for some people. But it's also liberating, because you really find that once you begin to develop some facility here, you're able to have a voice. I almost feel sometimes like in a jazz situation that I'm sort of soloing along with the soloist. I've got a counter melody happening underneath. I'm looking for places where the soloist lays an accent, or maybe I'm looking for a place where the soloist is going to take a breath and I'm going to put a little fill behind. Or again, the pianist might do something distinctive and play some rhythm that I'm able to keep the time going, but answer what's happening. If you notice, even when I started getting really crazy at the end there, the sense of time out of the cymbals continue to move forward. They get varied around a little bit, but there was never a loss, hopefully, of that quarter note stream that I was talking about. I can't overstate the importance of a great amount of listening to recorded examples and going out live and seeing examples of the kind of music that you're interested in, whether it's metal or whether it's jazz or blues or folk or anything. Once you have the ability to play a beat along enough to keep up with a recording, then you need to put on those headphones and you need to sit down and just try to play along with those things and pretend you're the drummer. And you will absorb so much of the kind of things you were just asking me about just by playing along and noticing against what you're doing, hearing the drummer on the recording, oh, the drummer just did such and such, and you kind of notice that it comes at this point in the song. A lot of that musical subtlety that you're talking about comes from several sources. It can't just be learned out of a book.
If you're in a club to hear jazz melodies, but your laugh sounds like Tarzan calling out from the trees, if you're booming like a thundercloud, you're talking too loud.